Here we go again with the second lockdown, the worst sequel since Grease 2, Jaws 4 and Police Academy Mission to Moscow. And never more has what we are going through felt like a political project rather than a public health crisis. How so? Because for the first time we have clear evidence that the graphs and projection used to sell this second damaging pandemic lockdown have been readily and widely discredited and proved wrong. We now know that during the government's hurriedly assembled press conference on Saturday, in which they dared to interrupt strictly, the slides were out of date and the worst estimate, 4,000 deaths a day, was simply wrong. On November the 1st, just over 200 tragic deaths occurred when the model was predicting 1,000. Of course, every life lost is one too many, but the COVID measures will kill many more and devastate lives. It was therefore an extraordinary moment when the former Prime Minister, Theresa May, stood up in Parliament, and this week she said the following. She said, "For many people, it looks as if the figures are chosen to support the policy rather than the policy being based on the figures." Amazing. So you really know you're in trouble when the strong leadership in the country is coming from Theresa May. That's like looking to Johnny Depp for marriage guidance advice. Mrs. May abstained in the vote for a second lockdown, and 39 others heroically voted against, including Sir Graham Brady, chair of the Conservatives' 1922 committee, whose job is to keep the Conservative Party united. Extraordinary. But he's had enough. And who could blame him? It's interesting, isn't it, that all of the errors the scientists have made have painted an exaggeratedly gloomy picture. None of the other errors have gone the other way, have they? None of them have underestimated the risk. And why would that be? Because all that matters is getting a message of fear out there to support this political project. And how is this political? Well, because all of this, everything that's happening, is a decision. COVID isn't destroying Britain. Our reaction to it is. Lockdown is a decision. Shutting down businesses and putting millions out of work is a decision. The borrowing is a decision, and the ruinous furlough scheme is a decision. The furlough scheme, extended now until March, is such a gamble, such a punt, such a disastrously bad investment. It would have history's greatest fraudster, Bernard Madoff, quaking in his boots. He would simply say, "You've gone too far on this one." A key word for me throughout this has been overreach. Our leaders have been going beyond sensible measures in the public interest, which we accepted in March, to something more illogical, irrational, reckless, and now we're finding out dishonest. All to send a message of fear. And the flavour of all of these messages and measures is highly undemocratic. It's overreach. The Welsh Government telling the good people of Wales what a non-essential item is in a supermarket and taping off oven trays, winter throws and talcum powder. Overreach. Sending us home from the COVID-secure environment of a pub or a restaurant 1 hour early, thereby killing off the hospitality industry, only for everyone to squeeze onto public transport all at the same time via a trip to the offie. Overreach. Building a fence around students' halls of residence at the University of Manchester, for which those idiots have now apologised. Overreach. We'll be talking to one of the students on today's show, if he's up. Children banned from football training outside, and for whom, therefore, the only exercise they'll get this month, our young people, is in their thumbs as they kill a few more gangsters in Grand Theft Auto. Overreach. Borrowing £500 billion from future generations to pay for the so-called management of a virus whose death toll is not even in the top 10 killers in this country, and for which the average age of tragic death is 82. overreach. We've never cared so much about disease before. Ever. We've never cared. We've been the sick man of Europe for decades. With exploding rates of obesity and metabolic syndrome, no one bats an eyelid. We drink too much, we eat the wrong food, we don't exercise, not a squeak out of anyone. It's rank hypocrisy. Now we're in a pandemic which is politically more sensitive because of the emotive nature of a tragically daily awful death toll, and now they do care. It's overreach. What I suggest is that we have a death toll to run alongside the tragic COVID death toll, a death toll of deaths caused by lockdowns, a daily death toll of jobs. Let's have a live borrowing clock erected in Trafalgar Square so we can see the national debt skyrocket live, and as it happens, overreach. Here are some questions I'd like to ask you, because it's what you think that matters, because it's your country and you are the boss. Is COVID worse than cancer? Is COVID worse than bipolar disorder, domestic abuse or suicide? Is COVID worse than dementia, heart disease or type 2 diabetes? Nearly 4 million people in this country have type 2 diabetes, which is linked to every ailment you can name. It's life-limiting and life-shortening. Where's the lockdown for that? I dream of overreach for these illnesses that have been damaging and killing our citizens for years. The fine county of Essex sent several police officers in squad cars to forcibly close a gym yesterday. Now, don't get me wrong, the cops are doing their job. I'm sure many of them think it's lunacy too. But how many muggings, burglaries and violent attacks were happening at that moment as they stood there trying to drag a bodybuilder called Big Jim off the shoulder press machine? It's ridiculous. It's overreach. Forcibly repatriating a 97-year-old lady from the clutches of her caring daughter, who's a nurse, and dragging her back to the prison of her care home. Overreach. Now, I think the idea of civil disobedience is reprehensible, and I've got no interest in the marches and the crackpot conspiracy theories. This isn't conspiracy. It's idiocy. There's been a hashtag trending, a hashtag I will not comply. Now, this is wrong. The job for all of us as a nation is to follow the guidelines, however reluctantly, because we have the rule of law. It's what makes Britain a great country. But alongside that, we must also continue to debate, challenge and question what's being done in our name. We must not be gaslit and silenced by our leaders and those advising them. They are making choices on our behalf, and they will affect us, those decisions, for decades to come. We're allowed to talk about it, and on this radio station, we will. What's happening now in our names and in the names of our future generations is reckless at best and criminal at worst. I will follow the rules to the letter, as I always have, even those wretched masks. But with a crystal clear understanding that we have chosen a path of maximum damage. I think there's a good chance that what is currently being done to the country for the curtailment of a, yes, nasty, horrible, highly infectious disease, but which has an incredibly high survival rate, will see the obliteration of an entire political class. There were just a few courageous outliers, led extraordinarily by Theresa May, during the week in the House of Commons. So remember the 39 heroes in Parliament who tried to stop the madness. And as for the rest of them, never forgive and never forget. This is Talk Radio.